Hello everyone, this is just one specific of many arguments against conspiracy theorists that I will probably upload in a series. Now I don't want to spend all too much time on dealing with other people's stupidity, so these videos will be rather rare and I will still focus on explaining actual science in an actual interesting and civilized manner, but I don't want to stay out of the discussion completely, and there are some very obvious arguments against conspiracy theories and flat earthers that I just want to bring in. These are not all arguments. Obviously, there's tons more evidence against conspiracy theorists, but this is just a start of what I'd bother to upload right now. So, this time we are going to look at the NROL satellites, or NROL satellites as they're sometimes pronounced. And they are quite funny because they're probably one of the most powerful arguments against conspiracy theorists related to space of all kinds. Doesn't really matter if it's flat earthers or people believing that there are secret alien colonies on Mars or whatever, because this is just general space secrecy. It is pretty obvious if you do know some physics that keeping stuff secret in space or faking stuff in space is close to impossible because spaceflight is difficult. Spaceflight involves huge amounts of energy and mostly against a basically dark and mostly visible background. So anyone with decent measuring equipment can follow your rocket launch from anywhere and you can't really hide it. And every few months or so, there's this by now very predictable thing where the Air Force and the NRO, the National Reconnaissance Office, try to keep a satellite secret. They don't try to keep the satellite as such a complete secret. Of course, there's a satellite, it's going to be launched, but they try to keep top secret where exactly the satellite is going to be positioned. And every time it takes amateur astronomers between half and a full week roughly to figure out exactly where that satellite is. Which is sort of predictable if you just look at how big space is, how big a satellite is, how many amateur astronomers there are, how much we know about their trajectory, how good telescopes amateur astronomers have. You can kind of predict how long it will roughly take to spot a satellite that is attempted to be kept secret. Now, I do find this interesting. I'm not going to argue about the actual ramifications of spotting secret satellites. The sky is obviously free to watch for everyone, although I can imagine that the US government isn't too happy about people finding out where all their secret spy satellites are. But it shows that there's probably not much else secretly going on in space because, well, if there was any big space conspiracy, you'd expect those same amateur astronomers to point that out too. If the Earth was flat, those amateur astronomers would have noticed by now. If there were secret meetings of spacecraft and alien UFOs in space, those amateur astronomers would have noticed by now. If spaceflight was impossible and all the rockets were actually just going down into the Atlantic, those astronomers would have noticed by now. Governments generally have a terrible track record of covering up conspiracies, and based on actual conspiracies that happened, you can calculate about how long conspiracies would stay secret. And someone calculated that if the moon landing had, for example, been faked, that would have been found out, proven, admitted, and public less than 3 years after the fact. And, well, it's still not proven, so huge coincidences aside, that alone is pretty much evidence that it must have happened. Of course, there is a lot more evidence, but this is the idea that I'll focus about today. And the recent NROL 52 launch set a bit of a record, where amateur astronomers spotted the satellite only a few days after launch. And this is pretty far out in geostationary orbit. The Air Force tried to keep its exact location secret and people still found it, so obviously it must actually exist. So this was just one short argument against conspiracy theorists. Of course, there are far more. Of course, arguing with conspiracy theorists is almost as ridiculous as the conspiracy theorists themselves, but It's getting a lot of hype recently, and I just wanted to start putting up the most obvious and common arguments so I maybe won't have to repeat them on a minutely basis on Facebook. So I still hope you found this kind of interesting. Maybe it's going to help you get rid of a flat earther, and as always, thanks for watching.